Dang, my mind feels so mind.
Where is my mind? Where's my mind? We can just the world.
I'm trying to think about what's going on, what's happening.
You could always like talk about the forever journey of trying to like mix the things that is the business and like the business needs while also trying to seek the little like projects and things that you and like places you wanted to play and want to play as you like evolve and learning about that, which is like a whole thing. It's just a thing where you're like, hey, I got a business and I like to do all this stuff, but I like to do these kind of specific things, and you want to like find a way to do the specific things while also supporting a business and people that don't always fit specifically and neatly into those things. That's so fun one.
It is fun one. Like, do you feel like there's something that you want to be doing that you're not, that you have the desire to do that you're not?
I often think about it more like I go general concepts. And then I kind of like work my way backwards. So I'm like, I was thinking about it the other day. I'm like, okay, how do three, like there's three owners of this company. Or have we ever just like generally looked at all of the personal things that we would hope to be and pursue individually that also like work within the framework of our company, but maybe are like completely unique paths to ourselves, and like working on I don't know if we've ever looked at it like that and worked on a per se business plan that specifically supports those things. We've always kind of tried to find like the next best thing, but not always specifically to like the individual's dreams in the combo.
I agree with you on that. I think we haven't done that.
We've never really had the opportunity, if I'm honest, in some regard.
I mean, I think we almost always have the opportunity, but it always feels like it's a second tier thing to the quote unquote bigger aspects of pushing the business forward. But it's honestly,
you might be right. Yeah.
And I don't even know if it is.
I hear you.
So it's like the longer this is maybe in contrast to the conversation we had last time, because last time I was kind of expressing just some bigger stress about the big company, but then like to look at it in another way, it's like how lucky are we to have a team that can generally execute on a lot of the ideas that we do, and then which is amazing. Mm-hmm. You know, it was my mom's birthday last week, so we're hanging out with family, and one of her oldest friends is like, how's the coffee shop going? You know, it's just the one, right? And I'm like, oh no, we have 4. Like we have like 100 employees. She's like, what? And I was like, yeah, it's a whole different ball game than what we started. And she's like, wow, that's really cool. And for her husband owns his own business, and it's a much smaller operation, and it feels like a different vibe. Than it's like, how are you just not there right now? And I was like, oh well, yeah, I'm like super lucky / we've worked really hard to get to a place where if Jared and I don't show up behind the counter, everything still goes like exactly how it's supposed to go, which is awesome. And then looking forward, it's easy to just, this is not exactly what you're saying, but it's easy to just iterate on the things that you're doing now. Like what's the next best version of the thing we're doing now versus what you're talking about, which is what I think about a lot, which is like, okay, the older I get, the more I'm like, how do I tap into this like
the underlying passions that like fit here but also fit I
don't want to call it pure happiness zone, because I do really
think that's
I feel like there's something magical about, it's hard to explain, but I think the gut feelings of the founders or the owners of the company matter. Like even if they're hard to like dissect and put into a business plan. Like I think there's probably
energy goes through the company no matter what.
There's like undeniably like a handful of things that you or I could probably contribute that live outside of our current scope. For sure. That would be valuable, but it would be hard to put a finger on like, this is going to turn X amount of profit in X amount of time.
Yeah, maybe.
Like
totally. I mean, I was on a similar track with you actually. It wasn't specifically around you or I or even Charles and that concept. What it was is, well, 2 things. I was camping this weekend, and there was a bunch of people who I know but don't know super well, and it was like an overnighter, but then we were all working to do some like farming. It was kind of like a work trade. So there's
cool.
Quad who came up, basically got to like have all this land for free, but they were going to work for 3 hours to do some like harvesting of different fruits and vegetables and planting some shit. So it was really fun. But through that, there was a bunch of people who like knew who I was, but didn't know a ton about our business. And they were saying the same thing, like about the people who we work with, man. And they were comparing it to all these different places they've been, you know, it's like, we go to all these places and it's just like, they could care less about us, at least how it feels. And no matter what, when we come into every shop, and I go to all of them, it's just insane to me. These people are genuine and so on and so forth, right? So I'm, you know, preaching to the choir from our perspective. I think all people want to feel like their work matters. I think they all want to do a good job, but they need to sometimes just be shown perspective to make that really small, you know, and try to focalize it. But then we were talking a bit, we were picking cherry tomatoes, which is like up there. They're like, we're not going to do this again because it's like not an expensive product for how much time it takes to pick these cherry tomatoes and make flats. And I was like, this is easier than picking coffee. And we got in that conversation, which is whatever. But then I'm getting all this positive praise and it's a great conversation. A bunch of different people are interested in coffee, cat and cloud life. But then I was thinking about projects in general and things that are beneficial to what could be our business or just beneficial to the world, and like cool businesses. And we talk about when you and I'll go to restaurants with Charles or anybody, really call it a restaurant in this case, we're looking at all the things that are done really well, done in some regards better than we do it, done in such a way where it gives you an experience. And we're looking at all sorts of shit. You're showing me pictures this morning of like how somebody designed the inside of a First Cafe and like what they did on the walls, or I'm like talking in the past about what could be cool about some sort of like health and wellness center mixed with cafe, or we've talked about bakery and how if we had our own bakery, which we don't want to do at all, but like in the past, we're like, if we had our own bakery and our ability to make exactly what, you know, so, but then I was backing into that and I'm like, okay, should we start other companies or other things? You need always to be able to tie people to something that is a value that they believe in. But if you wanted to do something that you couldn't be involved with all the time, you need to be able to bring somebody or some buddies into a place where they're like really excited about something bigger than themselves, and sometimes even bigger than specifically just a mission. Like there's going to be like a personal tie of something. And that was where I started thinking about it. I'm like, if I were to open, or we were to open, call it a hot or not chicken, or a place with wellness in a cafe out front, you need somebody, or anything hospitality, you need like a couple of gangsters who want to run that shit, but they have to actually want to run it for a long time. And they have to either run it in a way where they know they're building it in a way to pass it to somebody, or they're building it in a way where they're like, this is something I'm really about in my soul.
Right.
And either like, you know, I'm going to like, it could be a million things. I'm going to set up a place that is so amazing that it brings, I'll make shit up, like it brings famous actors and actresses here, and I'm going to be able to like chop it up and network with people and maybe like learn about this world, or you know what I'm saying? Like there's always something, I think, like slightly deeper inside of our souls beyond just like only I love making, this would be me. I love curating A to Z, if I could, green coffee to preparation and delivery and how it feels in a cafe. Like that is something I love to do over and over again, but it's not like I don't feel like it's done because I did a cafe. You know what I'm saying? There's like more to that.
Well,
world.
I think that actually speaks to the importance of something like a mission, to where it's like, even if you do it, it's not if you believe in something so deeply and it's just like this part of the fabric of who you are,
right?
It's something that you crave and want to see it everywhere else. It's like,
sure.
I don't really consider myself to be an entrepreneur, but I'm passionate about all of these things and that we do, like all this workplace hospitality, like workplace culture stuff, because I want to see more of that in the world.
Yeah.
Like I feel like that is like a unique perspective that we can bring to the world. So even though we do it, it doesn't feel like it's done. It feels more of like a forever journey and I think that's probably why you see so many restaurateurs and people in this zone doing a lot of different projects. Like a lot of them have a lot of different things going on, because it's not like, oh cool, even if you're at the top of your game where it's like I own a 3 Michelin star restaurant, or I own one of the best bars in the US, you're like, yeah, we're doing it
right here,
but it's not done.
Yeah,
And it's like,
totally.
you know what I mean? Like, I still want to bring more of that to the world.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that totally seems reasonable. And like the people who are excited about that,
I guess they come with in
I
some
think
regard.
they come with, and
Mhm.
I think there's this mission. Well, it's like this combination between like the mission and the interest in the specific,
Like the actual work.
in the actual
Right,
work.
we've learned that.
And that's got to be this combo, because I think you can, if you don't like the work, you can latch onto the mission and do it for a little while.
Right. Well, you can even convince yourself that you won't need to be at a place where you're not necessarily happy with the work because the environment's so good.
And then sometimes I think that's it. It can be a positive. You know, I think specifically if someone early in their career, where maybe it's their first or second job, they're going to school, they have other things going on, they still want to work somewhere that checks all the boxes that you mentioned before. They want to know that they're contributing to something that's bigger than themselves. They want to know that their work matters, that their work has an impact on the people that surround them, on the greater world.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's like, I mean, we have a lot of those people, I think, people who are not going to be in the coffee or necessarily hospitality industry for life, but for a season of their life can resonate with this mission and be like, yeah, I want to do a really good job because I know what it means to the people around me, and that feels good. But then eventually, you know, long term, if you don't like being behind the counter, making coffee, roasting coffee, buying green coffee,
Right.
it's going to fizzle out. You're going to need to find something that matches like the skill and the passion that you have with the mission. And then those are like, you know, those are the people, those are the careers that you can make.
Totally. Those are the people that you impact and send on the way, but the lessons learned carry on to a better place, and that's great. And to them making a better place somewhere else.
So it's like whoever you have, just because someone's excelling in a certain environment at Cat and Cloud and loves the mission, doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be the best fit for something like Hot or Not Chicken.
Absolutely.
Even though the mission might be completely aligned, but the work is just different.
Yeah, the focuses are changing. Yeah, I was thinking about that today, and it is an interesting thought. And when I got a little off track just thinking about how you were talking about that, but I wonder like how that could look, and it's an interesting thing, you know. It'd be like, and I think same thing to your point, as you grow, you start going, okay, I kind of want, like, this all makes sense, how I'm here, and you're like, I want to lean into these little different areas, and I'm not quite sure. Or you'll go through a phase where you're just like, okay, I'm different than I was back then. Like, I'm not competing in barista competitions anymore, but I still like delivering and creating experiences, right? Like, that's something that I can easily use myself. Like, I want to do that, right? Like, and if it's not going to be that we set aside, for whatever reason, good or bad or whatever budget restriction, literally, we're not going to set aside all the money to be able to upgrade the things that we've built already into like the level that we want to the T. You can still work on that over time, but you're not fully, you know, it's like you don't get to actualize sometimes like the finished new best version of what you see. And that is an interesting thing, which is it's part of it, right? Like, and it's good for us. We're not trying to take on a ton of investment money just so we can perfectly pimp out every one of our cafes. But at the same time, you have this like, okay, what can I, we were talking about last week in a different way, and whether these come out in succession or not, but how do you optimize the resources you have to get the most bang for your buck? And then that's energetically, but it's also not just about me, right? That's where I get into this zone where I'm like, how do we do, and other business owners and people, like, how do they and we look towards squeezing the things that are positive still, but maybe like could feel selfish for ourselves, even though I don't think that's actually fair to say that. I don't think any of it's technically just selfish, but just like feeding yourself,
I feel,
while you're also feeding everybody else.
Yeah.
That's, I think, like the world of strategy I'm interested in right now.
What would that look like for you, do you think? Like,
I think I'm literally talking about it because I'm like, just, it's a thing I think about in general.
Yeah. Yeah, I think about it too, and it's hard to put a specific finger on what that would mean for me as well.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm trying to take something like in and out of context. So if Well, okay, here's I guess one way that is a challenge to look at some of these things. When you start something new, you go get an SBA loan and or something that covers your best version of the vision that you have for the thing. But if we have something that we already created, there's no more money to go get in a way. There's no more money in the bank for us to improve upon it or to take it to the Z that we wish we could have at the beginning. So like there's the one part of learning which like we should ask for more money at the beginning and saw like through the full vision that we could. Hashtag we couldn't afford it, so we couldn't do that, right? You know what I'm saying? So like, so then you're in a place like here and you're like, well, if I start another thing, then I can scratch an itch that's totally valid that like you want to provide more for self, people, opportunity, et cetera, create something. All good things, right? But that framework has been, it's the current framework that we know is because we've done it, right? That's the way. Take a loan out, get a plan, whatever the thing is too. This could literally be a loan for truly like any project. This doesn't have to be a cafe or a chicken sandwich place. This could be, fuck it, I don't even know. A loan to expand our green coffee program in some crazy way. You know what I'm saying? Like,
or
whatever.
like make a documentary film.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great example.
The coffee industry.
Right. Invest in some sort of, I mean, we did Best Friends Club, but you could like theoretically, yeah, we're going to invest money actually and put it in a place like Honduras and build out some like solar infrastructure for a mountain and maybe turn that portion into a nonprofit, but it like changes the world. Whatever. That's not even per se. It's an idea I've had in the past, but not an idea that like I can lean into enough to like fully say I'd be able to be a part of taking something to Z right now. But to take it back to the beginning, that's the current framework that we have used that allows us to move forward without saying, let's find somebody with a lot of money who will give it to us and then be like in league with us as a co-owner of some regard so that we can do stuff.
Right.
Right. And that's the other current avenue without getting strategic and or looking at being like very specifically strategic around intentions of how to do something kind of bigger and new at all, right? So this it's literally like if you take theory like I'm doing, I'm like, what would you do? And that's what I've been thinking about. So say I did want to create Disneyland, literally, from where we're at now, it's like, but you're trying not to take on a shit ton of random money, you know, blah, blah, blah. As an example. That's too big of an example because it's like
I think you just kind of it's
know.
not really. I mean, it all
fits.
Varying scales,
Yeah.
right? And I think it's all just choices like we talked about before, because there's nothing wrong with either path.
No.
But either path comes with certain positives and certain limitations that it doesn't pay to be upset about. They just are. So it's like if we make the choice, which is kind of not too dissimilar from the choice that we made originally, which is we want to keep as much equity in this thing as possible. And because of that, we're limiting our outside investments. So because we made the choice to hold on to a lot of equity, we're also making a choice to be more bootstrapped than not.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in a situation that's exactly what you're talking about, where it's like when we start a new project, you run the plan for that project, it makes total sense to take out $250,000, $500,000 to build a new thing. It doesn't make any sense to take out a random $500,000 loan just to improve Portola.
Right.
Or
there's
Swift.
no new income coming unless
no
you can
new
somehow
income.
showcase it.
Right. And we don't have the financial flexibility to just be like, yeah, we're fixing up
can't make that bet.
Swift to like the tune of $500,000.
Yeah.
We just wouldn't recoup any of it.
Yeah.
And like,
right.
So, and then the flip side is also true. It's like if we say like, hey, we want to go just full bonkers, like we can go full bonkers, but we give up some sort of creative control or ownership stake. Like maybe we were able to work out a system to where it's like, yeah, like you guys are co-CEOs, you're figuring out the vision for this and making the plan, and you own 15% of the thing.
Yeah.
And
you do have to answer now to a board of directors that have nothing to do Specifically with the people who created this vision and mission.
Yeah. I wonder if there's like some sort of happy middle ground, because I feel like
I'm sure.
there's probably some investors in restaurants who understand the restaurant space, understand that it might take years to recoup their investment, strictly invest because they believe in the people that they're investing with and aren't like a quote unquote traditional board.
I think so.
You know what I mean? Because when I look at, like when we went to Saison,
Yeah.
it's 100% the chef does not own that restaurant. You know, the
Doesn't
people
seem
that
like it.
somebody owns, like maybe they do, but because even the guy was saying like, oh, our new chef wasn't even the chef that we started with.
Yeah, yeah.
And they started as a pop-up. Someone spent a lot of money on that place.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that someone did it because they believed in the vision of the chef. And then there's something else, whether maybe it's a long-term investment or maybe it's just status. Like, I own this thing. You know, I'm a co-owner of this thing, and that matters a lot to some people.
Right.
You know,
sometimes it's tax breaks and depreciation.
Sure.
Of some kind.
Like there's some, like what else is working? So it's like, what do you want? What do you value? And maybe that shifts over time.
Well, I think your core values stay the same, but I do think what you desire and value and like your interests shift all over the place, you know, and I think that's life and growing up and wanting to see more of life's experience and to express yourself in different ways.
Right.
And have impact.
But like not in the sense of like your values changing, but it's
no, I don't think you were
so it's like when we started the company and I don't even know how I feel. I think about this sometimes because I think about, I don't want to work for anybody.
Sure.
You know, except for our guests and our employees. Like I want to do right by them, but I think I'd be a terrible person to be as an employee. Like, I don't know. So I'm skewing towards owning as much as possible. But on the other side, it's like, man, it would be really fun to have resources to do all these really cool projects. Like, would I might actually like that more. Like if I just think about it from a thought exercise point of view.
Well, when the responsibility is shared more in like a different way, right? When you have like, anyway, you go on.
Well, it's like, okay, so there's like you, me, and Charles are even Stevens, so we own 30% of this thing. But that 30% ownership
each, by the way, not total.
Right, each. Yeah.
and at least I think it's a little more, but yeah, right there.
Yeah. I just use rough numbers.
Great.
33, 33, like so, and that's set up intentionally, you know, like two of us will always have enough of the company to do whatever.
We can veto any idea.
Right.
We can make it something happen.
And if we dilute more, we still want 2 out of 3 to have like the majority share, which we're not even close to being anywhere.
So we can get there.
But I'm just like, okay, like that is a number, but aside from the decision-making power or like freedom that it gives you, it's really like a phantom number.
Absolutely, because we're not selling the business.
We're not selling the business,
so
nor do we have any plans
of
to it. So it's just a thing that's there.
Yeah,
that's really ambiguous.
It actually only costs us more taxes individually.
Right.
It literally gives us nothing else
for now. And then there's all these other weird, you know, strange stresses. Because essentially, okay, the way I see that 33% now is like, all right, that's my retirement fund.
Right.
But in order to make that retirement fund real, we have to
sell equity.
We have to sell equity or come up with some kind of agreement, which I don't think is ridiculous. So it's like, look, like,
when we're done, we're getting paid no matter what.
Right. Yeah. Because the way I see the value of, you know, long-term ownership like this is like partially the work that we do, but also partially the fact that we're just the owners of the business. And there's like some sort of like distribution versus W-2 to where it's like, we're getting distribution in perpetuity as long as we continue to own the company, and maybe we come to a meeting a month or whatever. I don't know. You know, I'm thinking like way long term.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's not like I'm just like, oh yeah, I'm going to sell the 30. So it's like, does the 30 make me happier than, like, let's say we take on a bunch of investment and now the 33 goes down to like, I don't know, 15 or who knows? I'm making up numbers.
I'm just exploring mentally as you're doing that.
Yeah, there's no plans.
Then maybe you think about you do need to sell it in the future to have your retirement.
Or are you just like, your salary goes up because now you're dealing with like different orders of magnitude of
and
business.
You're putting money into retirement yourself.
But then the biggest payoff is like you are fully funded to do whatever the hell you want to do.
Right.
In the meantime,
Should you? Yeah.
It's like, do you want to open a place like X? Like, do you want to open your version of Disneyland?
Right.
And it's like, you get to work on that project.
Yeah, I know. That
because
part
someone's
sounds
like,
neat.
yeah, totally.
Yeah, like we got that in the bank.
Good.
Give it a try.
Yeah. So it's just like interesting to think about.
I know. Well, I mean, both sides of that. Totally. That's where I was kind of going in my mind, because you're right. It's like that 30% is that 30%. So if we want if we want to keep everything the same, and then have that first idea of like, cool, we're going to find a way to have enough money that we can get distributions in perpetuity forever, then you also have to get to a size that has space for that, and like plan for that. And that's like a thing in the back of my mind. But then there's the other side to you.
Yeah.
Right?
But I think we're kind of like, could be on that path. Like,
sure.
You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I'm just saying like, that's just like the end. That's what you would need.
Right.
Whatever that is, and whatever that theoretical number we would come up with in the next 30, 40 years, we'll call it 20, 30 years. It just needs to be known what that, right? And then we got almost in some regard, go back to what we did at the beginning, which is we need 3 cafes minimum to be able to do this thing. And so in that sense, you could take some sort of magical inflation plus math number and be like, cool, we need to be this size of a company by then. What are we going to do strategically over that time, which is a smart idea. And it doesn't fit even necessarily differently. Like, I think you in some regard have to look at our company either way, whether it was that idea or the other, and be like, what are we looking to do? So, I mean, I think that part fits cleaner in my mind. What doesn't always fit is like, how do we do that? Which is either way, the growth plan, whatever we decide, we know we're gonna have to do something with like, okay, where do the individual passions get to the lead so that we're all loving our work? And they all probably will be slightly different, and they all
for sure.
Well, they are. And so like, how can we my thing is like, now how do you fit those into play so that we can work on them with what we got? And I don't know if we've ever like, I'm not personally clear specifically on all of what mine are. I think I have inklings of different ideas, but that's kind of what I was thinking about. Because the same thing would be like, if I was going to start a bakery, I would want somebody who wanted to have some ownership in a bakery, who really had a passion to put it out there. Because nobody wants to get up without really giving a shit at, maybe not even get up, maybe stay awake from 11 o'clock till 4 a.m. every night or many nights, curating amazing pastry and baked goods, unless you have a belief that you have a reason and a want to do that. You can think you want to do shit, and this is to your point again, like, you could think you want to be involved with specialty coffee or a company like ours because of the mission and the values, and like, you can see this like short-term vibe, but then you're not checking in with yourself for real and be like, do I actually like, laminating dough or making espresso for people? Do I like standing behind a counter or running around behind a counter and having these interactions day in and day out? And that's something that I can genuinely answer both yes, in that I love to create things for people and hand them to them and have them drink them and taste them like, holy shit, this is one of the best things I've ever had. That idea, though, is actually the core of me. It could be coffee, right? It could be the cafe experience. It could be turning this little podcast studio, right, that we're into, and like the best version of it, the version that I'm like, I cannot wait to go in there, whatever that might be, like, that is maybe more the core of who I am with this shit. Mm-hmm. Right. So then you've got a core of who you are and your stuff too. And Charles, I think, as well. And everybody else out here listening has a more of a true core of like who you are and what you want to express. So like, if you're a business owner and you're getting some of that, great. But like, if you're not getting that or giving that, then you're going to slowly have a fizzle of some regard. If you're just running the ship, you can still be creative and dive in, but it's not necessarily what you do. Right. So that's just kind of where I was thinking about these theories and philosophies. You mix that with like business growth and being, or even just call it business ethics and being sustainable as is, like where we are now, right? Like, that to me feels like the interesting strategy that I want to learn about and figure out for myself. We should learn about it for ourselves. But I think that's something there's so many people I talk about who are business owners who feel that way too. They're like killing it in the way where they're setting up things to make more money for their teams and their opportunities. I'm literally like, I have human beings, not even us.
It
like,
just sounds so funny to say it like that. It's hilarious.
yeah, well, and I'm saying this literally not talking about our company.
Yeah, no,
I'm
I
talking
know. It's
about
just
like
funny
I have
to-
individuals in my mind who are successful, and they're successful. Not only that, they're successful as like being regarded as leaders and owners, successful as in terms of building opportunities for the people who come along with on like multi levels, whether it's personal, whether it's literally new projects that bring in more money so they can get paid more. And they are all kind of tired and you know what I'm saying? Like,
because
and they're not feeding themselves.
Nobody got
or
into
fed.
business to do those things.
I know, right?
Like most people who are business owners, well, at least in our space,
Yeah.
this is my impression of things.
Well, I'm thinking about some other industries right now when I'm talking
It's
about
like those are all, unless you're really passionate about them, like, I mean, let's call it what it is. It's like they're traps based around money. And money is this really, really
Right.
powerful thing. Like once you get a taste of a certain quality of life or the possibility of having more of it, it's really hard to go backwards.
Mhm.
And you can talk
That's
about
fair.
everything you want, which is like, oh yeah, housing's more expensive now. True. You know, inflation, yes, it's a real thing. Minimum wage is
That's
up.
all
Like
part of it.
all of those things. But it's like, honestly, it's like if I go back in time and, you know, tap into the way I felt like way, way, way back in the day when I was like really in certain zones of my life, it's like I wasn't happy because I had a bunch of money or
No.
had a bunch of stuff. I was
Mhm.
actually probably like a little bit more calm, a little bit more chill, but it's like
Definitely more free time.
more free time. And it's like, it's really, really rare for me to meet someone who is, well, at least aware enough and will make the trade to honor the thing that they really want, which it's
Mhm.
like, you know, if I was going to decide, let's say I was just like, okay, my daughter's going to be 2 pretty soon, works fine, but it's not awesome. This is hypothetical, right? My daughter is going to be 2. So, but like,
Yeah.
and then I come to you guys and I'm just like, hey man, it's like, really like what's going on here, but where I'm at in my life is just like, I just value my time more than anything.
Mhm.
Let's figure out a way for me to scale back this role, and I can do a couple things, and I'm just going to be here a couple days a week,
Right.
and like take the financial hit for it. And then I got to figure out how my life works,
Mhm.
which means it's like, yeah, I'm probably going to have to move
Sure.
to a
Right.
less expensive place. I'm probably going to have to offload some toys. I'm probably going to have to do some of these things.
Mhm.
And like maybe at the end of the day, I'm actually way happier, but it's like, it's
Mhm.
so easy to become identified with the life that you've built and the
Yeah.
things that you have and the things that you own and the groups you run in and like the status that you have from being this and that. It's like,
Mhm.
I mean, I talk to people all the time that aren't too different than you, or it's like business owners. Again, I don't want to name names here, but it's like, I'm like, dude, you guys are crushing it. They're just like, dude, I'm fucking tired. It's cool
Right.
that it looks like that from the outside. I don't feel like it.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, okay, cool. So you're running in place, making more money,
Mhm.
super not stoked. How many decades do you do that before you realize, like, I actually don't value this?
Yeah, totally.
You know? And I think it's okay to be like, and it's not like like there always is some sort of trade-off.
Yeah.
And kind of knowing what you want to do, to where it's like when I'm listening to you talk, I'm hearing someone who is just like, okay, cool. I love creating these experiences. And
Right.
like my biggest juice comes from figuring out like, okay, what is the experience going to look like, feel like, smell like?
Yeah.
Like setting it up from ground zero.
Right.
Like
and then basically tour guiding people
getting
through
the
it.
right team together, like, and then bring this thing into a reality. And then
Yeah.
once it's in this reality phase, where, you know, the people who are passionate about it are running it. It's like, like it exists. And then it's like,
and then
cool.
I get to participate in it by being there and seeing it live and whatever. That for me is like,
right. Like you're not working there. Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then
at least full time, I definitely would like to be able to play with the experience to make it really good. I want to work at it enough to make it the best I can for the people who take it. But
sure,
not every.
But I mean, if we like fast forward,
no, totally.
it's like,
I'm not working there.
You're not working there in the same way that you're not like. Yeah. I will not find you behind the bar.
No, it's more artistry.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, not for a long
right?
time. Yeah,
like
I will pop back there and play and then roll, like because I can. But yeah,
right.
And I wouldn't anymore. You're right. Like I would have a nice time. You know, when we took over, you and I took over Portola for like that 1 week and worked every day, like super fun. But like
super
the
fun.
way the life is now, it's not sustainable.
It's just not our reality.
It's just not our reality. It just doesn't work. So
and it's like it's not even. It's just part of a different. Whole situation. And I think that's great. And like it's to totally know fine. That you're like, okay, cool. Like I'm really energized. I like the feeling of being somewhat a part of these things that I've created. And I really like the feeling of building something from scratch. Like,
yep. Taking something, I also, same idea, but taking something that's there and being like, let's make this, you know, let's turn this thing from a 3 to a 10.
Right.
But it's the same idea.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I mean, you can take a blank space that's nothing and turn it to a 10. So I hear you.
Yeah. And then it's like some of those things you have the opportunity to do now in a way that you maybe wouldn't. So where it's like if we had a cafe that you, let's say it was an 8, then you want to take it from an 8 to a 10.
Yeah.
It's like you can do that within certain limitations, right? It's like we have financial limitations, we have personnel limitations. Everything has to make sense inside of the business model that we've created. But
absolutely.
But a lot of the things that make a place special, some of them cost money, but a lot of them don't.
A lot of them don't.
Yeah.
And we are actually, to our credit of our leadership team and ourselves is BOD, and we are in process of working on a lot of things that do exactly what we're talking about.
Right.
Then that's great. Yeah. But the flip side, right, is all those limitations make it take time. It's not a problem. Part of it. It's just part of it. Like it could be a full year before what we're working on currently right now is actualized. That's part of it. So I hear that too. Yeah. I think there's two things. There's your side where you're like, you got to theoretically, potentially, you could give up certain things to have, call it time. And that was a great example of reduce your workload and your role and potentially take a hit. I guess the way I'm trying to look at these things is what could people do, and maybe we could explore or find ways to help or collaborate with other business owners and minds. What can people do to keep and or still improve their livelihood while finding ways to pursue more of that freedom? Like that's the antithesis, is right. Like can strategies or leadership or structures, intentions, which is, I know the answer is also still yes. That's why I'm living this way, right? There is ways.
Well, I kind of feel like that's exactly what we are doing right?
Agree.
Yeah, that's
I think we have, and we recognize that from the beginning. There's no way we can have now 4 cafes, 100 team members, and try to be engaged parents and leaders and have a life in any regard without doing things. And we have done a great job so far.
Right.
But there's now this level where it's like, okay, what does it look like now to do these next little steps that I'm kind of just like in search? What does it look like to do both and again in a different way, while maybe potentially building towards, call it that retirement level life?
Yeah.
And I don't need an answer now. It's just like I think that's been like the underlying, we've had all these talks over the last months, and I think that's kind of like the underlying bubble is that idea, that concept.
It's hard to clarify too, because it's hard to speak about now because the way you're framing it, I still don't feel like I completely understand, what the things that you're like, what are you not getting that you want to be getting, or you know what I mean? What does that specifically look like to you? Because I think in step one, and I think we can build anything. So it's like the first step in building that is to be able to bring it up, talk about it, and just have it be part of the conversation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
In some form of clarity.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And some because I think, and I agree with you that like those things don't seem like they're a huge part of the conversations, because the conversations are really pragmatic. Like they're focused on leveling our people up, leveling up the experience,
Right.
and it's like we haven't had this deeper soul version of, you know what I mean?
No, well, I mean,
Because it'd be really
sorta.
easy to take the things that you're saying, and I'm like, yeah, you have that job already.
Well, I guess so.
You know what I mean? And I'm kind of like,
throw out
I'm
weird,
like
crazy
poking
ideas.
you a little
Well,
bit here, right?
But so yes, and like, okay, so you would, I don't remember what podcast or what conversation or even if it came out yet right now, but you had talked about, okay, if I had a thing, I would build this thing with the kids in the book.
Oh, right.
So
Yeah,
that's a thing.
Yeah.
Right. So then there's a vision inside of that fits very cleanly actually into who we are now, but it also has some other elements with like in terms of like values and delivery of like some specific things, right?
Yeah.
So then there's me who's like very interested in health and wellness and mental health, which all kind of fit into what could be the geeky thing that I talked about, which is, you know, if there was an epic cafe like we have now where people actually came, but then just behind it or in the same place, there was, you know, a couple things, your yoga-y thing, your steam room, your sauna, I mean, in a perfect world, actually it would be like refuge.
Right.
Plus some
Like
hot yoga thingies with like an actual community hub cafe. Like that is like one of the things that'd be epic, right? To me,
Right.
Total dreamscape.
Right.
If you're an employee here, you have access to that. You see this, like, for me, I'm like, holy shit. Like the stuff that I wish that I could have touched and or go to literally.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's real. Like I would love to do that.
Right.
But it's like, I don't feel like any, like that almost, and I'm not saying it's true, almost feels like in the group of the three of us, it'd be like, yeah, but that just doesn't fit, which is not
right.
And I'm not saying it's true or not.
Totally.
Right? In the same
No,
way
I
where,
feel
like,
you.
I think your thing would also fit, but also you could argue the same shit. And
Totally.
then
yeah,
even more weird and same, like to the taking care of the kids, having a place that you want to be too. I would, and again, it fits again into health mixed with the shit that I'm loving, but like similar idea, build out a small version of like, if you took a warehouse like we're sitting in right now and you turned that all into like basketball court and you put a thing and you had a training center where like, but it's mixed with a cafe and a club situation, and you pay and you have these people who could train, like you do these little coaching seminars but you also have a place where you and the boys can come shoot hoops. It's like, I can see very clear what feel very clear, and I actually 1,000,000% believe money making opportunities that would do these things, and it's not about the money, but what the strategy is like what would also bring in the money and make it worth doing, right? Make it worth pouring money into. Yours would, this would, you know what I'm saying? Like, and they fit, but they don't, but they do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
that's
I
where
hear
I'm
you.
going. So that's like
Totally feel
those
you on that.
passionate deliveries. Same thing with like school related, or like bringing people to the where can we build the retreat or the get together, the weekend, whatever it is, like SHFMs where the entrepreneurs do come here and get the full curated learning experience where they come away like, you know what I'm saying? Like all that stuff is actually in us and we want it. And that's where I'm like,
yeah,
you know, that's
you.
real. Like all this shit we've talked about for years and years and years. So that's more where I'm going. Like, how does that start to work?
Yeah, I think the hard. Well, there's multiple hard parts of that.
Super hard
because I've talked about those ideas before, and when I share them with anybody else, they're like, "Is this a cat and cloud or what?" And I'm like, "I don't know. It could be, but it also could not be." And I'm, so. The quirks that I can see right off the bat is that any of the business models that we've talked about like that, I think 100% would work.
Yeah, the models, I can see it pretty
The
clearly.
models don't feel like a trip up. The things that feel, so it's like you, Charles, and I have this like base level values alignment. And then the one thing that we like definitely agree on is we love cafes, cafe experience. We know we have expertise there. So it's like anything in that zone feels like a mega win. So Cat and Cloud, despite having like a bigger mission, it's like coffee is
like coffee and retail experience and that kind of delivery model. Is that where you're going with that? Like, are you saying it like feels safer?
Well, no, it was like the thing that we agreed on. It's like, I don't think Cat and Cloud
so we're
would
talking
exist
just specifically agreement, not belief, and not like
right, not belief. No,
related.
I think we all believe that any one of those things could be good.
Yeah.
I think it's like, it's just like depending on how you wanted to manage resources, how you wanted to manage time, how you wanted to like see it.
Right.
So if I was doing it,
you need somebody to like. We couldn't theoretically. We would need to build whatever these things are with the right and able amount of time for ourselves to actually do it and find the right people to come alongside and run it.
Right. And at the expense of, if it could be the Cat and Cloud, and then we have to figure out, because one of the things that we like do all the time is like, we see like a certain group of people that we're trying to level up and level up and level up and level up to have, because there's, Charles talks about market rate, which I think is smart. It's like, if you like some sort of stability in the business to where it's like, cool, if something happens with X person in X position, we're funded and liquid enough to be able to get somebody else to do that position and not have to scramble and be like, what the hell? So that totally makes sense.
Right. And that's literally that's like a business metric that totally is a cause and effect. You make this much for the company in general, you can pay this much to the people who work at your company. And
then depending on how, the new, let's just take like Refuge with a community hub, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a ton of money up front.
Depending on how depending on how it interfaces with the base company of Cat and Cloud will impact, because we don't have the energy or time to do multiple projects at the same time. So if we say yes to a project like that, we're probably saying no to another thing. So it's like, let's use Herman's like a good, I mean, it'd be cool if we maybe didn't have to, but I just like seeing where we're at, it seems like, I don't know. It's like, you know what I mean?
I think so. I think so. The way I see stuff like that though, because of the way, so I guess, let's rewind. I actually got the formal, like, you were right, I'm sorry, from Charles about believing in the kitchen, right? Remember when I was like, dude, we're going to do the Swift Street kitchen. He's like, bro, restaurants are shit margins. Like, we can't do it. I'm like, I'm telling you, it's going to work. And this is just like, this isn't even a rip on him. He literally told me this like a week or two ago. He's all, dude, you were right. It's like, so there's that part, which is you have to be able to see what's possible. And, now we kind of see across the board in coffee, not just from us, before us too. Like, these things actually are viable. They work. They are rad. They're not easy. But then you say the same thing about your ideas or mine that even just kind of been thrown on the table here. They affect more than just like what's right in front of you. So who comes and participates. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I agree with you on like
what about wholesale, right? Like, oh, you want to work with or like, it bids the opportunity for us to answer those questions of like, how did you do it? And it's like, you know what? We should set up an actual intern and actually invest in the school, because we've proved that this concept around mission and values and delivering experience with hospitality at its forefront works not only in coffee, it works in these other places.
Well,
which
school to me seems like a no-brainer. Like that actually feels like it fits like really cleanly within what we want to do. And then I'm more talking about, it's like, okay, when you're growing, like, if you're growing it in ecosystem, one of the things that would be, and we can decide.
I do hear what you're saying.
We can decide to do it however we want to do it.
Right.
But if I took like a person as an example, it's like, I love using Herman because he's just such a good example of
he also started at the bottom. Now we're here, literally.
And he's superstar. So it's like, how does this new project affect someone like him, or does it not? And you can do it either way. I say like, Herman, you're the head of retail. Cool, you're the head of retail. We're actually opening up a spa wellness center with a cafe, and it's like, like how do these things mesh together? Is this an opportunity for the like a certain amount of people that we have to level up their thing? Like, is he now like the head of retail operations for everything?
Right.
Which could be a possibility.
Totally.
I'm not saying
These are
this
the
is a bad
questions that'll come
idea.
up.
I'm just saying like these things are worth talking about in
it's what
terms
would
of
happen.
like, okay, cool, like we have to deliver an experience at the spa in the same way on a much higher level, honestly.
Oh yeah,
like
totally different.
Which is it, and I don't even think it would be harder necessarily because the economics make not more sense, but it's like anytime you level up in what something costs, you have the opportunity to have like a more, I don't want to say better experience, but a more robust, like intricate experience.
Yes.
Like if you're paying
Totally.
$150 or $300 to go to a spa, it's easier to get the accoutrement dial than like a $7 trip to a coffee shop, even with the scale.
Right.
Because
well,
it's
you don't have the model where you have to have 1,000 people coming through the door to make money.
And the overhead's completely different.
Yeah.
It's like you don't need
there's going to be hidden
12
fees,
people
don't
behind
get
the
me wrong.
counter.
Yeah,
but
there's
like,
shit we don't know, but it is different. The model is different altogether.
Right. How do those things work together? Do they at all? What does it mean?
Yeah.
And I think if you solve, like if we're able to have those conversations and like, you know, what is every person's involvement?
Right.
Then it essentially becomes a belief and a funding thing.
Yeah.
Which I feel like funding is the easiest thing to find once you have some sort of,
if you have a clear
some
vision
sort of
and reason and picture of something, I think you can find people and or banks who are willing to
we also have
support.
a successful business that
Well,
is
that's
proof
what
of
I'm saying.
concept
Yeah.
that is way more powerful than any kind of pitch we could do. Like we can put together
Well, you
a
take
tight,
that. What I'm saying, and even if you pitch a new project, if you can relate it to how, you know what I'm saying, that's where I was going with that.
It
Like,
wouldn't be hard to loan money to the people that own Cat and Cloud.
Yeah, I think,
Right? It's
yeah.
like it would be more sketchy to loan money to the people that had the exact same idea as us, but zero track record behind them. That would be a much riskier investment.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you figure out, because you're really kind of easing everyone's tensions, right? Like, let's say this was your pet project. Like, what I would need from you is like, just ease my tensions. Like, bring me along and show me how we're going to
Pre-answer the questions.
go into this new industry. Because when you're telling me you're going to open a cafe, I'm like,
yeah, we've done that.
great.
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
I have no apprehensions about Jared's ability to run a cafe.
Sure.
And I'm going to ask minimal questions because I see it every
It's
day.
Like, what are the basics? Give me the location. Give me the rent structure. Like,
right. And then
what's the personnel we have to potentially run that shit?
And then regardless of how much I believe in your ability to bring things to life, if we're going into a completely new direction, like we're just going to need to know more about, okay, cool. Like, how are we going to approach these things? How are we going to structure it? What are we leaving on the table by doing
Where's
this?
the legal?
And then like how, you know, how does it work? What's
Yeah.
like each individual person's involvement and like what does that look like? Let's paint this picture, because that conversation is like completely different. And we use my thing for an example too. I'm like, hey, we're opening a nonprofit, like help kids get work experience. And they're like, what does that mean? Like, what, like, sure. Like, yeah, you can have a cafe that kids work at, but it's like, is this like, what, like,
yeah, totally.
plug me in
Certain
here,
people,
you know?
Yeah, certain people need to see it like you see it, right? And that'd be our job,
Right.
is to paint pictures for what you see, which is great. Like,
and then,
I think that's totally doable once there's some sort of like clarity on, yes, we're going to try, versus what are all the potential ideas.
and then everyone can back it in a way to where it's like, there's so many ways to structure it. It's like,
absolutely.
you could structure it in the main line. You could structure it as like a separate LLC with a certain, like, you know, it's like, let's say we wrap Cat and Cloud LLC in a bubble and say we own 33% of this each forever. And then start some other LLCs
subsidiaries.
where it's like, okay, cool. This is still a risk, but we're going to take on some, we're cool with taking on a bigger investment in the subsidiary, to where it's like, maybe we set out a structure where it's like, we're going to get paid this much to do this. We own this percentage of this, and we're going to take on like 1.2 million right up front.
And do a thing over here.
Right. And that's its own
that's
little
a way.
thing, which is not unlike what it seems like most restaurateurs do, to where they're not starting from scratch. They have investors who essentially believe in the vision and want to bring it to life.
Seems like that's where a restaurant group comes into play. in some regard.
Yeah, even just these one-off.
And
I mean,
then-
a lot of them I think develop into groups, but even just like
Yeah,
you
but
know, I
you
mean,
like start one, then you do another over here with something else.
I remember the first time because when we were going to LA all the time, and like Bestia was a Verve account,
Yeah.
and everybody talked about it. So I was like kind of grumpy about going to these places that everybody talks about for some reason, because that's just how I am. But I went there and I was just like, holy fucking shit, this place probably costs $5 million. Like,
Right.
like this is insane.
Yeah.
And it's not like just some chef who just randomly has $5 million. You know, it's like
No, it's going to be a while for them. Like
a
there's
group of people
payoff
own this
plan.
thing, and they're like, all right, we're
Right.
doing this, and we believe enough and have enough financial flexibility to sit through the dip
Yeah.
and wait for it to pop.
Yeah. Our
if this
ROI
is going to
on
be
this is 10 years.
right. It's like it'll
If not
like
more.
this is going to be like a deep seated institution, we hope.
Right.
To our, in the same way that if you looked at, you know, a place like Refuge, I'm sure was so much money to build out, but it's like
landscaping, all that.
yeah, but
Insane.
they've been there. I don't know when they opened, but I could see them being there essentially forever. Because they provide
Absolutely. And look
something
at the
that's
well within locally. Like
right.
people want to go there, and that's what makes me think about stuff like this.
Right. It provides something that's unique, hard to find,
Feels
great
good.
experience,
Yeah.
feels good, and it is not really. I'm kind of going out on a limb here, but it's like those things are just such deep luxuries. It's like if you go to Refuge, you have some sort of disposable
for
income,
sure. That's a special one.
right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's like
that's
which
gangster.
is.
But that's
I'm not saying
why.
that as a bad thing. I'm saying that it's like
No, it's a good point.
It
though,
actually
'cause,
makes
like I'm going maybe twice a year tops, right? Like,
right, but there are people who probably go all the time because
Yeah, and
every time I
maybe
go,
there's
there's
membership
people
for people
there,
too,
and I'm
yeah.
like, it's like those things are almost recession proof because the people who are deep into six figures
right.
are not going to be like, oh man, I got to skip Refuge because my groceries are a little more expensive this month. So
No,
you
I
kind
mean-
of got this bolstered business model that is in some ways more robust than something like a traditional restaurant or a grab and go food place
Yeah.
or most coffee shops.
Well, and we
Like,
live in an area where there's people like that to support businesses like that.
exactly.
So I mean,
yeah,
I
like
know we're
the,
at
the
like,
locale
quote,
is
an advantage to that idea.
exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's like so that seems like it's like an interesting talk about some of those projects because we don't really have the conversation too much of choose your customer in the cafe because like in terms of the cafe you're dealing with local demographic.
Yeah.
That's
And
just
then in
the-
our town, some tourists, but
that's
mostly
just-
local demographic.
right, tourists too, and that's like the nature of the thing, and you set it up to cater to those people, and it's like a pretty wide range of people.
Yeah, and I think that's actually to our credit that it's a wide range of people.
And it's
it always is at cafes, but I think it's specifically like to ours, right? You get everybody, and I love that.
And with a business like this, it would be making a clear and conscious choice to, you know, it's like,
Right. With one
and
like,
I don't think that's bad. I think that's great because you're,
yeah. I'm like, yes, I agree. I think there's also a way. Totally, that's a different world. We're going in a different place, but I'm like, I think that's maybe kind of the fun way of finding some sort of ground where it brings more people to something like that. I think is also a little bit of my underlying. So I agree with you, and then at the same time, I'm also like, but some of those yoga studios are like cranking, and they're expensive, but not fully on luxury.
yeah.
So,
I mean,
I'm not saying you're wrong.
Well,
I'm
that's
just
what
saying,
I'm
like,
saying.
this is where I'm like, okay, it'd be cool to turn it up to offer a place that like can get more people to experience something similar. You know, like that's a little bit what I felt about with specialty coffee and what we're doing. I'm like, how can we get those people who are maybe can't afford to get the kind of experience to get an experience that like lives in that same realm?
which I guess even
It's
that,
a little bit of a thing.
because you're not saying anything that's different than what I'm saying. Because
No,
I'm just
no.
saying
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
making a choice, and even
Exactly.
that you're making a choice. You're saying like,
That's
how
in
do
the
I
strategy.
make the highest level accessible version of that
Exactly.
thing?
Yeah. How
And
can I
then
bring more people
that-
to this thing that feels so good
That
to
is
experience?
a choice because
Yeah.
by proxy, like if you make
Sure.
that decision, you're going to leave out some people on either end of the spectrum where it's
Yeah,
like the
totally.
people who want the like super fancy
Right.
don't want to go unless
Unless
like,
it's like, sure, there potentially is. Yeah. I know what you're saying.
I mean,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
for sure do. It's
Yeah.
like the more you're for everybody, the more you're for nobody. So you can't
Yeah.
be for everybody. Like
Sure.
everybody is the path to like whatever. But
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
saying like there's a specific zone.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and I think that's totally. I think that's totally fine.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know what I mean? I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
Totally. I hear what you're saying. I think it is specific enough, but I know what you're saying. It's like finding a way to
Well, what you're saying is
provide the gathering spaces for more people to experience something that few people can right now, or less people can. A lot of people could get to refuge, but as that example.
yeah. I mean,
But maybe even it's like, yeah, totally.
Even
There's
with refuge,
ideas.
you still got a minimum financial buy-in. That
Yeah,
like
if you can even get in. There's times I've tried to get in, you can't. It's like
right.
booked up
So
these
it's
days.
like it's not for people who don't have
Yeah,
like a reasonable disposable income, unless
Yep.
they're making the choice to where it's like, let's say you had a few $100 to spend on whatever
you're,
in the
like, going
month.
for the
You're just
weekend.
like, I'm gonna skip all of my daily coffee this week so I can go to refuge.
That's what I used to do for Disney.
Which is
I
fair.
had nothing
Like,
else. I'd save my money up and go to Disneyland.
That definitely exists.
Mm-hmm.
So, but even like if I'm taking our cafes, it's like, oh, I was talking to Marcel who gets the Gibraltar. He's been getting it forever, and
Yeah.
it's like he showed me the coffee shops he went to in Japan, or like that
Yeah.
thing that you sent me that's like 100
Totally.
yen for a whatever. It's like
Yeah.
those places exist, and there
Yeah.
are people who just love that stuff, and we are not.
No,
that,
we're not
right.
that. Totally.
So it's like.
And I don't want to. Yeah.
We're more closely
Right,
aligned
good
with
point.
what you're talking about
sure.
than like, oh, cool, I'm going to spend like 6 hours and, what was like,
Mhm.
James was drinking like €300 shot of espresso.
Yeah.
That's a different.
Yeah, I'm at base level not even interested in something like that.
I am too. Like,
But there's nothing wrong with that. I
No,
hear
I
you.
don't
Like,
think- I
that's
don't
what you're
think-
talking about.
that's what I'm
like,
saying. It's
That's
like,
what it's not for me.
Who
and
is
not
it going to
something I
be
would
for?
about.
And like, what
Totally.
is like, because I think with a place like that, you really got to understand the guests and like
Mhm.
cater to like, you're creating an experience.
Absolutely.
So
and
it's
that's
like-
I think the fun, right? Is like that's literally the fun. Is how do you make it as, for lack of a better term, as bougie and dialed and pimped out as possible, while finding a way to make it accessible to more people who would love it, but not force them to be like in the upper echelon of society.
It's like the difference between.
I hate the term upper echelon of society, but I don't want
Well,
you to
just
have to
who
be
make a lot of
millionaire.
money. Let's just say people who have a lot of money.
Yeah, it's like when I was a kid, I wanted to do all that shit and I couldn't afford to do any of it, so I was always jealous. So how do you find a way to like bring more people to the thing that you wish you could have done when you were a kid? And that's basically like your simple version of that model. It's not make it for everyone, but it's make it for people who can like, who are interested and can like, who want to try some shit, who want to really experience that kind of life.
Yeah, you're like
And,
kind of picking.
they're
a
willing
lane.
to invest in it, but it's not the kind of investment that's like you have to be a six-figure income person to do it. Like what is that? I guess is where I go with something to that effect.
Yeah,
And then there's spades in there, and it's not perfect and clean. So
yeah.
it's just it's fun and
Some
it's
of them
meaningful.
Are just
to
like
me.
even if you can ignore the like, okay, cool. I mean, all the things we're talking about are essentially luxury goods. Like,
I mean, Well Within though, people do right. It's
Well
booked
Within
up
is
and
not. No, Well Within is really
but
accessible.
It is luxury, but it's accessible, right?
It's like
and
more.
You can like, exactly.
It's not on that refuge level of like.
But like, is there something between those two where it's like, whatever, that doesn't matter, and that's
then-
not even specifically it. It's just like it's a great example because it's something that you and I've done. And when we're talking about refuge, by the way, everybody just think like literally hot tubs and cold tubs and medium tubs temperatures. All on amazing land.
Medium tubs.
Yeah.
There's tubs everywhere.
All
Just picture bathtubs.
And they don't look like hot tubs. They actually look like mini pools with rocks and vegetation all around them. And every one of them is waterfall driven.
It's like
so
a
it's like, think about a
perfectly
beautiful oasis.
landscaped
Yeah.
oasis
With
where
fire pits.
You go in, you get a locker with a fancy robe, and
Yeah.
you got some slippers, and you go outside, and there's
relatively
minimal
quiet.
talking, and you go in your steam room.
You're on the
and
side
it's
of a
like-
hill that's covered with pretty trees.
Yeah, you're in the Carmel Highlands,
Yeah.
essentially.
There's
You're
the
just-
largest, which I just found this out by Googling it to see, but it's the largest salt and not infrared, but largest sauna with the salt wall in California or maybe the United States.
You can do your thermal cycle.
You got
And then
multiple
Well Within
steam
is a
rooms.
much more. Well Within's downtown Santa Cruz. which is kind of like a more traditional like bathhouse
And
thing.
you get like an
you
hour.
go in, you get a hot tub, and it's nice.
It
It's
is
not
really nice.
not
You get your tea,
nice.
you get your
You know what I mean?
robes.
But it feels remarkably different than going to Well
Yeah.
Within.
Well,
Like,
and the Well Within, you
or,
stay
sorry,
as long as or Refuge. You stay as
Refuge.
long as you'd like at Refuge. As long as you have to book, but as once you're in, you stay as long as you'd like.
yeah,
And Well Within, you're slotted. You got basically it's 45 minutes to an hour. Hot tub, private sauna, tea, shower, all in the same room for you with like an open view to a pretty landscaped koi pond, Japanese maples, etc. Like you're right, they're different levels,
the different levels.
and
then
you
there's
know, one of them's double and a half the cost of the other.
And there's other ways to create the levels like you're talking about aside from the money. So let's say the money's all the same. And then I'm just saying that just
no,
because
it's
it
good.
sounds like, oh yeah, you go to fucking, it's like, I get that not everyone's like, yeah, I'm going to fucking fancy spa day like
it's
every week
true.
or whatever. But
It's
even
just
with some of the
something
restaurants that we go to where it's like multiple Michelin star restaurants, some of them, you know, are built on that kind of old school feeling to where it's like we're really formal, we're borderline stuffy, white linen tablecloth. This is how it is. And some of them, like Saison that we went to, or Lazy Bear, it's, you know, the food's not any worse. It might even be better, but the people are just still incredibly professional, but also so relatable to where you're like, you know everything you need to know about these plates and about these beverages. And I would also hang out with you after work.
Yeah.
Whereas some of them are, you are a professional, but I don't even want to kick it with you.
Yeah.
You're just a little bit too, you're like someone's butler or something.
Yeah.
It's like, this is not my scene,
Yep.
you know?
Totally. Yeah, dude, that's what it is. I just want to create a bunch of stuff that's like the other thing you just said. Got some ideas. Anyways, that's what I'm exploring. What do you guys think? If you're out there and you're just like thinking
Anybody
about
want to
stuff,
spend some money on Jer over here?
no, it's not only that though. Like I'm just like, what do other? I know other people are and other business owners are thinking about this shit, and even just general leaders. And if you're going to have a business, it's just something that's going to come up maybe, because you're not going to be the same person when you open your business as you are 10 years down the road or 20 years down the road of owning your business.
Dude, you know what?
You know, and
On
that's
the-
just
on
real.
on the flip side, oh my gosh. Like,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we got to wrap up
It's okay,
soon.
we're gonna wrap
but,
up briefly.
I go down these little YouTube rabbit holes, and I went down this one where this younger dude, and he makes these videos about old school Americana automobile stuff. So stuff starting in the like early moonshine bootleggers, like moonshine runners, to like vintage NASCAR, drag racing, all this stuff. And he interviews these people who have these legendary old shops, and no shit, there's multiple videos of these people who have been doing this. One dude, his name's Ed Pink. He's a legendary engine builder, Southern California, built a bunch of like really famous drag racing engines.
Right.
Like, so he's 93.
Mm-hmm.
He talks like he's 60. The dude's so incredibly aware, building motors,
Right.
like
Loving it.
doing the same thing that he's been doing
Right.
since he's like 24, and a dude's on point. And then I'm just like, he's just so in love with the thing. And then there's this other dude at another shop, and he's 80. This other guy's 80 something.
Right.
He's been building engines his whole life too. And he's like, oh, I got this little mini 420. It's like a half size motor that I just like, you know, I made it myself. Like
Right.
he like crafted all the parts for these little miniature carburetors, and he works for the shop, but then he's also doing this shit just for fun. And he like runs, and he's like, what are you going to do with it? He's like, I don't know. I just make it, man. He's 82 and he's just juiced. And I'm just like, that is awesome. Like he has just found the zone. And I think there is,
feels parallel to me.
I don't know. But it's kind of different than what you're saying, which is like, you're not going to be feeling the same thing. Like these are people who have been doing, I mean, I'm sure they've found different ways to be creative in that thing.
Well,
but
not every motor's the same, right?
Totally.
I think that's where it feels the same soul there is like you love doing the thing, but each one of those motors theoretically
Right.
could be your cafe or your experience. So like it's the same but different. Like I'm being the truest form of me, and I'm figuring, you know, like
Right,
for
right,
me
right.
that's where I relate to that being the same but different. Like feel like I'd be that same guy in this kind of lane.
Right. So
Yeah.
you're saying like maybe
Like for me, it's creating
So when
these
you're saying
experiences
business
that
owners-
better the world. Like I maybe am an entrepreneur in that way, where it's like I want to build shit that I think will make the world better, that I'd love to participate in. That would be like my motor, and
So
I feel like I could do that indefinitely.
So maybe what you're saying to other business owners when you're saying you're not going to want to do the same thing when you're 10 years in versus 20 years in versus when you started, maybe you're actually just saying you might be doing the wrong job, point blank, period.
Yeah, maybe.
Like you might be
Sure.
running a thing when you should be starting a thing, or you
Yes,
might, you know
that's
what
exactly
I mean? Like
totally real.
right.
You maybe need to find people who. That's where I'm going with. I guess it's totally.
And then
Like-
maybe on the flip side of what I was talking about earlier with making choices, like maybe you really love running the thing, and you know what? I'm perfectly
And that's
happy
good
making
enough.
$50,000 a year for the rest of my life because
Right.
I live a simple life and I have everything I
Right.
need, and I'm not for want, and I
Totally.
drive a 92 Civic and I'm down.
Right, and that's just like what I want to do.
That's also a choice
love
that is
it.
like completely okay to make.
1,000%.
You know,
That's a great sum up of
right.
the concepts potentially in play and many different ways where we might want to explore them.
Yeah, we'll just end right there.
Perfect, because I have to live.
Appreciate y'all.
Hey everyone, that's the podcast for the week. Thanks so much for listening. If you heard something that inspired you, let us know, or tell a friend. These are the types of connections that are the most important to us and that we seek to create every day. If there's something you heard and you want to know more about, send us an email to podcast@catandcloud.com or head to our website, catandcloud.com/podcast, and let us know. While you're on our site, check out everything we have to offer. Dive deep into one of our single origin coffees or pick up a little treat for yourself. We have something for everyone, so check it out. Also, find us in the usual places, YouTube, Instagram. We're always there sharing amazing things. All right, that's it. Thanks everyone for being awesome. We'll be back next week.